Welcome to our podcast, A Novel Talk, co-hosted by Carl Lee, and I'm Wendy Kendall. Breaking news. This month, I signed a contract for a new romance book to be released later this year, Heart of Christmas Cookies and Dreams. A delicious romance that includes the recipe for the sweet cookies that you are going to love. And coming this summer is my new mystery and romance titled Cherry Shakes in the Park, a mystery adventure of dangers, divas, and frothy delights. My romantic mystery, Snow-Kissed Cookies to Die For, is available at all online retailers. Desiree and Leo are tangled up in romance and mystery. She's a first grade teacher and he's on the school maintenance staff, and they're falling in love. Desiree's being stalked. By who? There are several suspects, including Leo. Is he Desiree's the one or the stalker? And my mystery book that began it all, Cat Out of the Bag, that's Cat with a K for Catherine Watson. She's a purse designer and amateur sleuth who goes from designer bags to body bags when she's faced with a murder mystery. In the prequel, Purse-stachio Makes a Splash, Catherine and Mayor Brenda Durling investigate a chilling cold case. Now I'm busy working on the exciting sequel. Just wait until you see what Catherine's facing this time. Thank you to all the readers who've let me know how much you enjoy my books. And here comes your co-host.
And I am one of those readers. I cannot wait for the next installment of Cat. She is awesome, and Bayside is awesome. Speaking of new stuff, Wendy,
Yes.
By the way, this is Carl Lee, co-host. I started a brand new witch detective novel.
I love it.
Keeping my paranormal elements in play, but getting a little closer to your side of the thing in a detective series.
Excellent. Well, our guest today is Kathleen Marple Kalb, the author of the historical Ella Shane mystery series set in Gilded Age New York, which includes books A Fatal Finale and A Fatal First Night. And coming soon, her new book, A Fatal Overture, will be available. We're waiting in great anticipation. She's also a weekend morning anchor at New York's 1010 Winds Radio, capping a career she began as a teenage DJ in rural Western Pennsylvania. Welcome to A Novel Talk with Kathleen Marple Kalb.
Hi there.
Hi, Kathleen.
Hi, how are you? Delighted to be here.
It's very
Wonderful
nice to meet
to be
you,
here.
too.
Nice to meet you both. It's nice to be here with you guys. It's wonderful.
So, Wendy mentioned one of your novels, A Fatal Finale, which I thought was awesome. And in that novel, we meet Ellen and her cousin Tommy.
Yes.
It's cute how he hovers over her, very protective. I love that. But he has a very interesting backstory that comes through in the story. Can you tell us more about how he made his transition from the boxing ring to being an opera company manager?
Sure, that's easy. The transition is because Ella's an opera singer, and Ella's mentor, Madame Lentini, was getting ready to retire just about the time that Tommy's career was getting to the point where it might be a bit too dangerous for him to have a life after that career. And so as Ella tells it, he quit to devote his management skills to her career, and shortly afterward, the guy who he would have fought killed his opponent. So it was a good time for Tommy to get out of boxing. And it's really about family. He likes opera. He's very good at stagecraft. A lot of it, we realize as you're following the series that a lot of the production stuff is Tommy. He's got the eye and all that stuff, but his initial reason for doing this was to protect his cousin Ella. They're really the two primary characters in the books.
Yes, and their relationship is amazing. I love that. It's almost brother and sister
It is.
type
It is.
closeness,
Yeah.
which I really love. I think it's very endearing. Um, in in a fatal finale, there's a legitimate evil Duke, and I love that. And Ella
Not
and the
evil. He's not evil. He's just clueless.
but Ella and the Duke have fencing practice, and
Yes.
there are other sorts of sparring that she's equally adept at. Can you talk more about where she gets her quick wit and sharp tongue from?
Yeah, she's somebody who's come up the hard way. She's always had to fight to survive, and she has a very strong sense of humor. It's very, I think what has gotten Ella through all of this time is her sense of humor. And Ella and Tommy are both kids who came up the hard way, and they never really lose their ability to find something amusing in a situation, even if it's something very dark and not very pleasant.
Which I love about Ella's sense of humor, by the way. Kind of melds with my own.
Yeah, mine too. I'm a news person by profession, and trust me, you don't survive in a newsroom without a dark sense of humor. So,
Ella's mother tells her a story when Ella was a child, and she says, "You can be anyone you want to be if you work hard enough." And I love that. I think that that's a very powerful statement. It's actually something that I've spent most of my life living by.
right, me too.
How does this phrase guide Ella's life as an adult?
Well, I think even as a successful singer, and she's obviously somebody who has all the, all the money and acclaim that she could desire for her life, she feels that she still needs to work at it. She doesn't just show up and have it handed to her. She doesn't expect that people are going to treat her, just going to do whatever she wants them to do. She shows up and she works just like everybody else does.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a scene where she's with the Duke. I'm not 100% sure whether this is in finale or first night, because they're walking and talking. It's a relationship scene, not an evidence scene. And she says, "There's a happy ending, but you have to work for it." And the Duke, who of course grew up in an entirely different kind of world, although not as rarefied a world as you think, says, "That's so American that you must always work for good things." And it is very American, and it's very 19th century. I think of Ella as kind of a female Horatio Alger character.
Mm-hmm. Nice. I think that's in the other book because I don't remember that.
Yeah, it is. I think it's in a scene where they're walking from the courthouse back to her house, and they're talking about just stuff in general, and it comes up.
Yeah. So as you've mentioned just moments ago, Ella is clearly a woman of the new century. I love the way that's expressed several times in the book. What drew you to this particular time period? And as a bonus, I loved all of the authentic terms you used, like tintype and velocipede. I saw the word, and I'm like, I know that word. Give me a second. It took me several ticks back to remember what a velocipede was. I was about ready to Google it, and I went, oh nope, I remember. Bicycle. Got it.
Yeah. I wanted to make sure that we got the flavor. It's all, you always walk a fine line when you write an historical, because you want the people to be relatable, but you also want to be well aware that you're listening to somebody talk who is a person of their time.
Mm-hmm.
And so whenever I write Ella, I don't write anybody else on a day that I write Ella, because I don't want a modern voice bleeding into her. But she expresses herself. So that's that way of expression, that Victorian method of expression, the whilsts and the I would says and all that stuff, is actually from a lifetime of reading history books and a lot about the Gilded Age, and particularly the court of Queen Victoria, which I was just fascinated with as a kid. And I'll snap up anything related to Victoria or the Victorian era or anything like that. And so I picked up the language, and actually my husband teases me because I still say whilst. Really, on my own time, I say whilst, and my husband
you
will
tell him to shush.
he thinks it's funny because, here I am, this New York newswoman, and I can just as easily say, we're going to reach out to the cops or swear like Tony Soprano, but I will sometimes say whilst, and it makes him laugh a lot. So.
Yeah. And I like the fact that you scattered these in gently so that it added flavor without beating people up about it.
Thank you. Yeah, it's hard. I think you really, when you're writing an historical, you have to be very careful to get that balance of making people relatable, but not anachronistic.
Right. Oh, good word. I like that word.
Sorry.
So in the book, Father Michael says, Miss Ella, you're mixed up in murder. Of course, there's danger. I just it seemed so casual the way he said that. I loved it. But what about Ellen gives her the courage to stand up for what's right, regardless of the odds? I mean, she's in danger a couple of times in this book.
I don't think I think Ella thinks she's indestructible. Honestly, I really think that she thinks that she's young enough. She's in her mid-30s. But she's young enough that she still thinks she's indestructible and immortal, and as young people do. And I think also she had such a terrible childhood and such horrible things happen to her that the fact that she's still here obviously means she's indestructible.
Exactly.
In her mind. It's parceled out in little bits over the 3 books that are written so far, but basically she was orphaned in the tenements, and her mother died when she was very young, and she was with her mother when her mother died in the tenements. And then Tommy's mother took her in. And so she's had this terrible experience, and she's come through as, she knows that if Tommy's mother hadn't taken her in, she would have been dead in the orphanage.
Mm-hmm. So
she's not afraid of much.
No, and that comes through without seeming disingenuous. I like that. Again, you have such balance in this book. Not too much Victorian language, not too much Ella the superhero. Just the right amount to make everything that happens very believable and very doable, without making me go, So
Thank
Wendy,
you.
I'm excited to hear your questions about the other book.
Well, yes, Kathleen, your first book in the series, A Fatal First Night, is a tremendous introduction to the historical opera, as well as to your characters, while presenting the reader with a tantalizing murder mystery. Can you talk a little about what drew your character Ella to the opera and how it has shaped her memorable personality?
Sure. Ella, thank you. Thank you, by the way. Ella was like many real life Irish people at that time. Ella helped her mother, her aunt at this point. She was living with her aunt, and her aunt cleaned houses, as many Irish people did, to make money. And so Ella's helping her aunt clean a house, and she's singing while she cleans because Ella has always heard music, and the lady of the house heard this wonderful voice coming out of this little 10-year-old kid. And the lady of the house happened to be the sister of Madame Lentini. And she sent Ella over to Madame Lentini, and the next thing Ella knows, she's dusting Madame Lentini's piano in return for singing lessons. And Ella, it was quickly clear that Ella was not going to be a coloratura, a soprano, a princess type, a pretty princess type. Ella and when Ella moved in with her aunt, she suddenly started getting fed properly, and she shot up like several inches in height and became tall for her age. And at the same time, she got had started to be steered toward the lower mezzo soprano voice. And Madame Lentini's looking at this, big tomboyish girl with this huge voice and thinks she could play trouser roles. Which are like Romeo, or they're heroic roles that are traditionally played by women now, because many years ago they were actually played by men who had been, as Ella puts it, unmanned. And so, but there's this whole repertoire of these boys' roles for women. And Madame Lentini's looking at the young Ella and sees in her someone who could do that. And so Ella takes that chance, Ella's offered a chance to do something with her life other than clean houses, and she seizes it and she gives it everything she's got.
Yeah, I just love that because for me, at least as a reader coming into it, I'm expecting the operatic, even though it's historical, the operatic, the diva, and the dramatic and everything. And it's just like an immediate twist. And I just love that. And it's such a fun feel in her personality. It really comes out in her personality. I love it.
She's very down to earth.
Yeah.
She freely admits that, and actually it comes up in First Night, that she was a street fighter with Tommy. She and Tommy used to fight in the street with other people, and her background in fighting in the street comes up, and she did. She was a scrappy little Lower East Side kid.
Yes. Well, now on the other side, in the beautiful romance between Gil and Shane, there are some bumps in the road. A recurring theme is a matter of trust. Can you speak a little to the complex relationship between these two during this particular time in history? Because that setting in history becomes important in this, I think.
Yeah, it's a time when men and women were kind of renegotiating the terms, like we are now. At that time, women were asking for the right to work and the right to vote, and they were fighting for rights that they didn't have. And in many cases, married women became essentially livestock because they effectively lost their rights. And so it's a time when women who are aware of what's going on in the world and who think about anything have a lot to consider when they involve themselves with a man, if they can trust that man to do what he says, because the law is very much on his side. Once she marries him, he owns her. So particularly if he's a British aristocrat. I mean, there was a Married Women's Property Act. There were some laws that would prevent the worst abuse now, because by the late 19th century, there were some laws that would prevent the worst kind of abuse, at least in theory. In practice, not really. And so Ella has to, she's obviously drawn to Gil, and she obviously knows that he's probably the only man for her, but she also knows that she's taking a huge leap of trust if she gets involved with this guy.
Yeah, there's a lot that she has to consider. It is complex.
But he also is doing his work. I mean, one of the themes that goes through this book is it's not a question of, is the scruffy girl going to win the Duke, which is what it usually is in a romance novel. Is the little Cinderella going to get to go home with the big rich Duke dude? Is the Duke going to prove himself worthy of her?
Yes.
And that is a through line. He's learning how to be a better man, or the kind of man who deserves Ella.
Yeah, so he's got a very interesting character arc. It's true. Yes. You know what else I had such fun reading was the girls' friendship between Ella and Hedy.
Yes, I love them. They have a great time.
I know, they're so fun. I look forward to all those scenes. Both the women are ambitious, talented, perceptive, and in some ways they just don't fit in this time in history. But
right.
And Ella has this quote in the book, and she says, "Eventually you decide that the people who matter know who you are." And then Tommy's the one who sort of finishes that off for her and says, "And the hell with everyone else."
Right, yeah. And of course there's a reason that Tommy says that.
Yes, yeah. So, well, can you talk a little bit about that, and about, especially about Ella and Hedy and their friendship?
Oh, okay, yeah. Ella and Hedy are both ambitious professional women, and which is a very, very rare thing in 1899, 1900. And Ella's actually doing a lot better in her career than Hedy is, because there's a niche for her. There's a thing that she can do that she's very good at and she's very comfortable doing, and so there's a place for her. There's a recognizable place for her. Hedy, not so much, because yes, we've had Nellie Bly, and yes, we have had some of the early Sob sisters, but still, a woman reporter should be writing about hats, at least if you ask her editor.
Yes.
And so Hedy is constantly fighting to get off of the hats beat and onto a real story. And I hate to tell you, but that was the way women's lives in journalism worked even well into the 20th century. I know older women who were in the business before I was, who will tell you things that happened. And from my own experience, one of my first jobs included making coffee.
Yeah.
Because I was the only girl on the shift and you had to make coffee.
There you go.
Yeah. So it's so Hedy is confronting a theme that I think a lot of women have confronted all along with their work, which is, I belong here. I am capable of doing this work. Now I have to convince people of that.
Yes. Yep. Well, as a mystery author also, I have to get down to something about the mystery. In A Fatal First Night, one of the lead opera actors is found murdered backstage in his dressing room. Now, can you talk a little about the impacts of the murder and perhaps hint a little about just one of, there's several suspects, but maybe just a little
Sure.
tantalizing about one of them?
Sure. The guy who gets the joke is that it's a very bad time to be Richard III, because bad things happen to Richard III. The opera is it's not a real opera. It's a made up opera based on The Princes in the Tower. And so Richard III is the villain. And so the victim is found in Richard III's dressing room, and Richard III, who is the basso profundo, is found holding a knife and with the dead guy at his feet. And that's the first Richard III. And then we have a second Richard III who gets hurt, and we keep running through Richards III. And so that's part of it. And because this happened in the dressing room backstage, and the guy's Richard III is found, the actor Albert is found holding the knife. Albert's arrested and thrown in the tombs, and he swears he didn't do it, and he didn't do it. And the evidence points into it's ambivalently towards him. And so we spend a lot of time looking at that and trying to figure out who else might have been backstage and what their motivation might have been. And the guy who's among the possible suspects, we have a malicious understudy, because it's an opera company. You got to have an understudy who wants more than he's given. And Eamon is actually one of my favorite, like, unfortunate characters, because Eamon's a guy that they gave him a chance and he wasn't quite ready, and he's trying and he's not quite getting there.
Yes.
And which is a common thing in any performance-based business. If you get the chance and you're not ready, bad things happen.
Yep.
And so Eamon is a fun possible suspect. And then there are some nasty stagehands, and it's and there's just a bunch of people running around who it could be.
Well, I had a great time trying to solve which one it was. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. And of course, then there's the next Richard III has his own problems. So he's just trying to survive, because it turns out that people are coming after him. So it gets very weird very quickly.
Yeah, the mystery part is it's such a fun dimension to it, trying to puzzle out as the reader who you think the suspect is that really did it.
And we have a second murder. We have the B plot is the murder trial that Hedy is covering, and we're also trying to figure that out. And does it have anything to do with the main plot? Yes. Is it just Hedy's assignment, or is there something else going on here?
We'll leave that for people to get to read about.
Yes.
Well, chapter 20 is my most delightful favorite among so many favorite parts of your book. It's a fencing scene between Ella and Gil. I love it. It's like it's an exercise workout for them, and also a practice for a scene in the opera. This is so skillfully written, between the fencing moves and the intense dialogue discussion they're having because they're in a disagreement. Your dialogue is so vivid. Clue us in a little bit. What is important as an author when you're writing dialogue?
This is one strength I have from writing news, for my radio news, for my
Oh,
entire professional career. I hear things. It's, I've been writing radio news since I was like my first semester of college, maybe. And I've, obviously I was on the air before that. And if you're writing for the ear, and people always tell beginning writers, read it out loud because you'll hear it.
yes.
And I hear it. I've always heard it, or at least as long as I can remember, I've heard it. And so once in a while, I read something out loud and I go, no, that's not right, and I have to fix it. But it really is. I mean, I hear my characters. I can hear. It's like if you're a speechwriter and you hear the person you're writing for.
That is very interesting. I never thought of it that way, but I mean, you don't have to be a journalist to do that. You can practice that yourself.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And also it really is in a lot of ways, like people say when they write for someone else, they hear them, in their head. And that's the thing with your characters. You does this sound like something she would say? Is that something that, Tommy would express something entirely differently, say, than Mrs. Grozich, the housekeeper. And they would be, it's the same sentence would come out entirely differently from those people. And it's important to kind of hear that.
Well, you certainly mastered that. It's excellent.
Thank you.
It's excellent in the book.
In both books, thank you. Thank you. Speaking of both books, Kathleen, would you mind reading an excerpt from either of your books for
I would
our
love to.
listeners?
I would love to. This is one of my favorite. This is the Ella and the Duke's first meeting in a fatal finale, and this is the first time they meet each other. And
You're gonna love this, Wendy.
They meet and end up at cross swords because, of course, they do. So here we go. Ella and Tommy are practicing fencing in the studio upstairs at their Washington Square townhouse. And Tommy was just doing a pretty lousy job of being a fencing partner when Ella's maid Rosa rushes in. "There's someone here to see you, miss," Rosa, the housemaid, called, running in ahead of a very tall, dark stranger. "Oh," I stepped away from Tommy, still holding my foil. "He says he's a duke or something." Her big brown eyes were wide with excitement. "Everybody's got a confidence game," Tommy chuckled as the man walked in. "Not a confidence game at all, my good man. I am Gilbert St. Aubin, Duke of Leith." "Of course you are," I replied, taking a good look at him. Whoever he was certainly a positive addition to the rehearsal studio. He was several inches over my height, with nearly black hair, ice blue eyes, and enough time on him to make him interesting. Not ostentatiously dressed, a neat black coat over a dark day suit, a plain black fedora in his hand, so he might just be something real and not a swell. But probably just another opera fancier, if at least a creative and nice-looking one, so I decided we'll give him a minute or two. "Are you Miss Shane?" "None other." I held out my hand to shake, but he didn't take it. I remembered that British aristocrats are very uncomfortable with the new American ways. The accent seemed right, too. I'd spent enough time singing for my elegant supper in London to recognize the vowels and pick up a faint trace of somewhere else in the consonants. I put my hand in my pocket and did my best not to giggle as I realized he was trying very, very hard not to look below my face. He wouldn't have seen much if he had. I was wearing one of Tommy's discarded shirts tucked loosely into a pair of dark blue cotton cavalry twill breeches so old I didn't remember where I'd acquired them, with, of course, the light but modest underpinnings any proper lady would wear with such. "Good. I am trying to gather information on the fate of a young lady. You would have known her as Violette St. Clair." The giggle strangled in my throat. Poor dead Juliet. The New Haven coroner had ruled it accidental for the sake of their family if they were ever found. But since it was real poison in the prop vial that only she touched, we all knew what it really was. Oh dear, I'm terribly sorry. Was she a relative? "A cousin. I am the head of the family, of course, so I am taking charge of finding what happened to her." A muscle flicked in his jaw and the skin around his eyes tightened a little, the way it does when people are trying not to show too much emotion. "Well, Your Grace, I don't know how much you know. I have already seen the report from New Haven. I want to know what she was doing with you theater people." Tommy's eyes narrowed at the last two words, pronounced in a tone redolent with disdain and the unmistakable suggestion of all manner of impropriety. I offered a cool response as my sympathy for the Duke of Something died an early death. Theater people? I repeated. She was a gently brought up young lady who did not belong in that world. Well, aren't you the precious one? I took a breath and tried to tamp down my Irish temper. I explain, if not excuse, my next effort is an effort to do something other than slap the judgmental scowl off his face. I grabbed Tommy's foil. How's your fencing? What? My practice time is limited, and we theater people have to stay sharp to earn our keep. I'll talk to you while we spar. And that's how they met.
I love that. I love that scene. That was one of my. There were, like Wendy, there were a lot of favorite scenes in this book.
That one was actually in the query that got me signed and got that book picked up. That copy is actually in the query. That was the submission copy.
Well done. Well strategized. Well strategized there. Well, thank you for the reading, and thank you for reading one from my book because it was enjoyable.
Yes, thank you so much, Kathleen.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us for a novel talk. But can you tell us something about your new book, A Fatal Overture, and when is that going to be available?
It's out now.
Oh, good.
Yes, it's out now. This is Ella's third adventure. It begins with Gil, the Duke's mother and aunts showing up on her doorstep demanding to know when she plans to marry him. Which is freaky enough. And then they go back to their hotel and find a dead man in their bathtub.
Oh my gosh.
Like you do.
Like you do. And so the action there is in fact they are working to solve that murder, and then they find out that someone is trying to kill Gil. Somebody wants to take a contract out on Gil, and a friend of Ella's who has connections on that side of town foils that, but then things get weirder. And so you've got these two an actual murder plot and the attempting and stopping at a murder plot going on while Ella and Gil are fighting like cats and dogs over their marriage contract.
Oh, wow. I'm hooked.
And there's also a wedding, not theirs. Yeah,
intriguing.
No, if you've read First Night, you know whose wedding it is. I won't spoil it. So there's a wedding and a preliminary hearing in the murder case that gets very weird, and Hedy's mixed up in the middle of this too because she confesses to the murder.
Oh, wow.
And everybody's reasonably sure she did it to protect somebody else, but nobody's really sure how to stop her from getting herself in more trouble. So there's much fun to be had here.
There's a lot going on in that third book. Wow. Doesn't surprise me, though, with the action-packed first two. Listeners, you are going to want to get started on this series if you haven't already. And also check out the website, KathleenMarpleKalb.com, for more information about the author and her books, along with some special treats and short stories there. Thank you to our listeners for tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And remember, a novel read leads to a novel talk.